welcome back. Now we're going to be talking about platelet versus factor bleeding. There are lots of reasons that a patient might have a bleeding tendency. Broadly, you can categorize most bleeding disorders into two groups: disorders of platelets and disorders of coagulation disorders. The clinical signs and symptoms of platelet disorders, like von Willebrand disease, tend to be different than those of coagulation factor disorders, like hemophilia. Bleeding in platelet disorders tends to be superficial, like petechiae in the skin and mucous membranes or nosebleeds, and spontaneous. Usually the patient can't remember any preceding injury. So how about bleeding in coagulation disorder? In coagulation disorders, coagulation factor disorders, these tend to be deep, huge bleeds in joints and soft tissues, and they are preceded by trauma. Usually the patient has suffered some sort of injury that precedes the bleeding. These are generalizations, of course. Not every patient's disease follows the rules. But when you have a patient with a bleeding tendency, knowing the basic presenting signs and symptoms can help you get an idea of which broad category the patient's illness might fall under, so you can order tests in a more logical and thoughtful way. To read more, see Robbins' 9th edition, page 663.
Just throw your hands way up in the air and wave them all around like you just don't care. Yeah, roll up the and pour the drink and watch your stink. Cause doggy's on the gang. My bankrolls on swole. I'm still on hit legit, now I'm on parole. Stroll with the dog pound right behind me and rolling with my bitch. That's where you might find me flinging that G thing. She want the G with the biggest. And who's that? He is I and I am him. Slim with the tilted brim.
What's your name, Phil?